YouTube/Facebook SCIANDS and see what you missed. And then we also have Facebook. So we also have a page on Facebook. So I sent you an email and you can forward that to some of your friends. And this is a funny little thing I just need to share with you. I've known this friend of mine for 42, 43 years. And all of a sudden, now she is in Texas and I'm here, but all of a sudden I hear from her on Facebook saying, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you about my near-death experience. I've known her for 43 years. I never knew she had a near-death experience. And she's ready now to talk about it. And as we learned from PMH Atwater last month, it sometimes takes adults a while to process that experience. She has the statistics. It's somewhere around 10 to 20 years. And for children as well, like our speaker today, he had his near-death experience when he was 3. So it took him years to be able to process his experience back into his little 3-year-old body. He went to heaven in his soul, and that's much more advanced than coming back and getting back into that 3-year-old body and having to explain it to your parents, who may or may not believe a single thing you say. But anyway, he'll talk more about how he processed what he experienced in just a minute. I do have 2 of Jacob Cooper's books, and I have cataloged them. So I'll put them over near our library of books, and you can pick them up on your way out. I do have Dr. Atwater's books, Edge Walker, The Forever Angels, and the big book of near-death experience. And those have all been cataloged, and Angie can put them over there and you can check them out. If you want your own copy, I would recommend that you go and buy it at Amazon, and then be sure and give the authors a review. That's on Amazon. That's how they can get their books published more and recognized more. So after you read the books, even these, you could go to Amazon, I think, and give them a review. So be sure and do that. I haven't turned the camera towards you. It's on me right now. But just so you know, we do record the meetings, and usually this camera doesn't have a wide lens. It's not going to get probably anyone but who it's directly in front of. But just know that we are recording these meetings, and if you don't want to be in front of or on camera, just move over to the sides, and you won't be on camera. We don't do a spread thing like that. Although we're happy to have about 15 of you here today, and we're very thrilled with that. I also want to let you know that I want to invite any of you that would like to serve as a board member to make an application. Just contact me, and I'll send you just this short little application that said, has 5 questions. And we do need more active board members. We need people that can help Angie and Mike and I. We're like the 3 musketeers, and we need people that can and do attend most of the meetings. And we would love to have some of you that have some technical skills, someone that would love to take we have 5 boxes of library books now. And if you could just take them and record all the names of the books and their authors. And what is happening is I'm buying 2 or 3 books a month that our speakers have written. And it's kind of adding up in money, but I'm happy to do it. I want to share the books. But I've realized that to really share them, we need them to kind of come back to us. So I think initially, a couple of years ago, I said, well, take them and do whatever you want with them. But if you've already read them, please bring them back. Please bring them back. Now, if you want to share them with someone, share it and then ask them to give it back to you. I've shared several with people, and then I've just said, after you read them, Don't put them on your shelf, give them back, and I'll share them with all the people that are coming to the meeting. So if you would please do that, that would be so nice. So if anyone would like to be a part of our board, right now we have, 4 people, and we would like to go up to about 5. And we're gonna have a meeting in November, and you'll be invited to that meeting. And we'll talk about what ways you could help, what ways you wanna be involved. It may not be anything other than coming to the meeting and greeting. It's, Angie, she's greeting people, making sure they have their little, participation, ticket. So with that being said, I want to give the participation award. And the reason I do this, why is it that I do it? Because you're so valuable to us. You are the ones that are telling people about us, sharing about these meetings. So I want to award you a small little gift. This one is a little kind of Halloween. You want to pull the ticket? Look at your tickets now, and she'll call out the number. And you're all winners, but someone's going to be the real winner of this. All right, Wilma. Excellent. Quite often, and she has shared her speakers with us, and she's done all kinds of things to help us grow, and I truly appreciate it. Okay, guess what? Well, I just want to say one thing, and our speaker may bring this book up, but this is a book called The Little Soul and the Sun, and I did read in Jake's books that he recommended this book. It is written by Neil Donald Walsh. If you have a child, or even yourself, I've read it 2 or 3 times. I gave this to Xander, my 8-year, he was 7 last year. Read it to him. He's a very empathetic child. I call him an empath. And it was a little hard for him to grasp this concept of that people come into our lives for a reason. And sometimes they come into our lives to help us learn how to forgive. And so that was a little hard concept for my grandson at 7. But I think all of us have been in this spiritual journey now for, at least most of you, 30 years. And we've come across people that have done us wrong and hurt us, even our family, our parents. And what has it done but given us the opportunity to learn how to forgive? And that is what love is about. Love is about forgiveness. Jacob has a tremendous amount to share with us, so I want to let him get started. And I'm not going to say just a tremendous amount about Jacob, other than I think he's an extraordinary young man. And I am so, so thrilled that he has taken the time to articulate his spiritual journey, and it was very challenging. And now he has written 2 books, and I kind of want to know if he's going to write a 3rd, because I always encourage people that have had these spiritual awakenings, spiritual enlightenments, near-death experiences to try to reach as many people as they can. Sandra, who is here today, she's reached 60-something thousand people with a podcast. And I'm so proud of her for that. And Jacob, too, has been on several different podcasts, and you can find him on YouTube. So they are sharing their story. And by doing that, they're bringing light into our world, into our darkness. And so with that being said, I'd like to have Jacob now come onto our screen. And I think we'll be able to see.
Okay. Welcome everyone. Could you guys hear me? Because I could hear myself, but just maybe give me a thumbs up that you could hear me.
Hear
Well,
you very clearly.
you could
Yes.
hear me clearly. Okay, great. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Ians of Orlando area. Just a pleasure to connect with you, all you all here today. Um, so how many people do we have here? Because I can't see the
Yes,
particip.
three, six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 plus me, I think is 16.
Wow. So we have 15 or 16 people. Wow. So just a pleasure again to connect with you. I can't see you, but I could feel you. And, I thank you for taking your time out on your Sunday afternoon and listening to my near-death experience, which, yes, we'll get into the narrative of my NDE and the lessons of it, while also covering, a couple other topics of interest and maybe at the end we could have a Q&A. Um, so this is a really, wonderful format, to have here. So I'm glad that you did have PMH Atwater present because I think that's a really good segue to be able to understand my near-death experience, and I do credit PMH for her groundbreaking work and a lot of research for ch particularly children and infancy near-death experiencers and the validation of it through her hard research. And I do believe she's also an experiencer too as a child or infant as well. If I may be off on that, but
Well,
I
I think
had the
it was as an adult. But
as
you're
an
right.
adult, but I did have the honor of meeting PMH at an IANDS conference years ago, and yeah, she's someone who definitely you can't say near death experience in that without including her. So I thank Deb for inviting her and really highlighting her work.
Well,
But yes,
we were honored with them. And
yeah. But yes, PMH and Deb are spot on in a sense that before I get into my own near-death experience, I know PMH speaks about the time frame of processing in near-death experience, particularly your children or infants. For myself, it took around 2 decades to really fully integrate in this reality. And it's not that the narratives or the events changed at all. It was just the ability to integrate all of that stuff into this realm that did take, some time. And so while the events didn't change, I was able to utilize something that I felt for a period of time was more of a curse and see it more as a blessing. But for around 2 decades, I really kept it close to my heart, which is very a lot more common for near-death experiencers than you would imagine. At times when you have something so profound to you, there's two roads that you could take. You could either just want to shake everyone and tell them about what happened to you, or it's very sacred and you really keep it within. And so for myself and many other children and infants who do have near-death experiences, it's common to really keep it close to heart for various different reasons. I know on my podcast, I have a colleague of mine who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Her name is Lorna Byrne, and Lorna also had a near-death experience as, a young child, much like myself, and we have a lot of parallels. But Lorna mentioned that her guides told her to keep her near-death experience to herself for a period of time. In other words, she and the world were just not ready to hear of her near-death experience, and it would be information that would be used in a way against her. And who knows if she would be the person that she is today in the time frame um, in which she had her own disclosure of her near-death experience. And so timing is everything, but I am gracious for groups like IANS who have really been a big part of my growth and really where I began in my own career. I started speaking with them back in 2016, which doesn't sound like a long time ago, but you're talking almost 9 years ago now. And I do credit IANS a lot because they give a tremendous platform as well as an ability to ground these experiences is not woo-woo or out there, but something very much real. And as research is going and as documented cases are growing, recognizing more and more the population are having these. And more importantly, more people are able to get out with their stories, impacting the lives and minds and hearts of others. And certainly I do work in the field of mental health these days, primarily, and I work with children, adolescents, adults as well, as a mental health therapist. But also a big part of the work that I do is training other psychotherapists to really understand near-death experiences and other different transformative phenomenon. And why I do that is for a plethora of reasons, but the first thing is, you know, back in the day, not that long ago, if you were having, let's say, mediumistic experiences or maybe near-death experiences, um, if it wasn't for the groundbreaking work of Dr. Raymond Moody in '75, in which he coined the term near-death experience, given his background as a clinical psychiatrist, I don't know if the medical and mental health field would be able to see different phenomenon as something else, that it's not a psychotic break, maybe it's not schizophrenia, it is something very real. And so a lot of the work that I do these days is training therapists to really understand what might be something of the psychic realm and what might be maybe something of the psychotic realm, because that is, very real and evidential too. And we could get into the dichotomy and maybe how you could decipher those two within your own personal or potential professional lives. But you wonder, how many people who might have had these experiences were maybe put away or overly medicated or stigmatized in their experiences. And as a result, they were held back. Their words were not, ready for the times per se. And as a result, a lot of people weren't impacted by the ripple effect that could have been had others empowered that person to ground it in reality and to understand it for what it is, uh, in the conceptualization of it, and to see it as a blessing rather than a pathology. And, it's just, you just don't know the impact of your stories. And I did love what Deb said, where, each of us has a lot more innately a lot more value and worth than we could ever imagine when it particularly comes to our own experiences, whether that be signs and symbols that we may see, maybe it's just a moment where we feel the presence of a spirit. We just don't know the value of putting that out there. And it may be in your minds, you don't think it has much weight, but to another who's hearing that, who might be hurting, that could be life-changing. And so when I work in the mental health field, I see people all the time who sadly these days, there's a lot more resources, but the acuity levels of the mental health crisis is unfortunately increasing for various different reasons. But people in our lives come to us at times who might be drowning. Maybe they are going through grief, loss, depression, suicidal risk, self-harm risk, whatever that is the case. And you just don't know what someone is going through and the levels of drowning that they have in their lives. And so, if you could be there as a compassionate listener or also share your story, you just don't know the piece of solid wood and foundation that they could hold on to that could allow them to propel themselves out of their given circumstances. So, words, yes, could be limiting in a sense where we're dealing with language that may not be able to properly ever um, do justice to these experiences. Why I say that is, our reality, for example, is based on prisms of light from the sun. And so that's the color ranges that we have to offer to describe, you know, experiences. And near-death experiences engage with a different kind of light that goes beyond the sun in the light of eternity. And so, on a very just basic levels, we just don't have the descriptive colors to possibly conceptualize these things, um, and various other limitations. But at the same token, words are our superpowers here. And that's been the challenge of myself for now over 3 decades to do the best I can to paint an accurate canvas about what I described. Because I know, maybe in your life you might know someone who has traveled to a beautiful land and, you didn't go to that place. And when they come back to you, you want them to describe this land so that you could feel as if you were vicariously there with them or be able to relate to their experience. And that's the task of near-death experiencers, where we go to this beautiful place, we come back from that place, we don't, stay there. Otherwise, we would have um, probably an experience coming through maybe in a medium or something like that, um, in a workshop, but we are here, we stretch that rubber band to that reality, we come back here. The task at hand is really to describe what you saw, the story of it, but more importantly, the meaning behind it. As many times in life, what we walked into is just kind of what we walked into. But consistent with life, what we walk out of that, the meaning, the beauty, the wisdom, the understanding, that's more of the task that I feel, is on near-death experiencers, the ability to really have what we call the dharma of the experience versus the karma. Karma being the story and the dharma meaning the meaning and the purpose and the essence. And so before I get into my own near-death experience, I'd like to leave you maybe with one quote that I feel is important. Two quotes actually. One is really conceptualizes what we're all here to do, but particularly near-death experiencers. We live very much in accordance with what the late Ram Dass said, which the sense is we are all just here to walk each other home. And that's something that we see a lot, maybe from social media. There's that meme that people do see within that quote. It's getting a lot of traction. But by that he means, and from my understanding, is when someone talks about a near-death experience, a lot of times people may feel that they are left out if they didn't have one, or that they can't understand it, or that they might put a near-death experiencer maybe on a pedestal, or feeling like they have privilege in their viewpoints. And we could get into some of the double-edged sword phenomenon within time. But I would say, I just throw back that question um, as to why people are tuning into near-death experiencers more and more today. What is the epistemology? What's the reason? What's the purpose as to why people are tuning in? And something that I hypothesize is a possibility is that there is something familiar that I and millions of others now around the globe are talking about that strikes a chord of recall within the minds and hearts of those who have had near-death experiences and those who might not have had. And, that's congruent with, and I don't want to get too religious here, but, in terms of what Jesus spoke about when he said, the kingdom of heaven in me is in you too. And I think we have to remember that near-death experiencers really just give a great strengthening in something that we already have within ourselves. We are all infinite, eternal beings who come from the same, realm on the other side. We'll go to that. It's a one-way ticket back. For near-death experiencers, it might be like two or three, and some of them are like cats. They have like nine different, lives or, death experiences. But, well, I don't say death experiences. I just say bodily death experiences. As To me, I've learned clearly that death is a grand illusion from going right to it. Um, and, I think the word itself is problematic. If you look at Webster's dictionary, death just means a complete finite ending with no stoppage. And so to have, to be looking at death and then to see eternity, is a bit of a contradiction. It's something that is finite, and then you're talking about infinite. They're contrasting. But in a way, I think to understand these things, understand the eternity of life, is to really understand our own experiences. We've all had maybe moments where we just thought, this is it, this is the end, there's no more. And then through our own pain, we find an oasis, we find a pathway, we find a beauty. And, near-death experiences like that too. You just hit a wall, there's nothing that you could see, there's nothing you could feel. You just feel that's it, and then all of a sudden you just kind of wait it out and you find that oasis of eternity. And that's kind of similar to the Albert Camus who was a philosopher who talked about, within the dead of the winter, you could find an infinite eternal summer, and there it is good. And so within all parts of our lives, it's just to really be able to understand that pain could be a great way of our ability to open up our awareness in a shake-up period of a life to find a different prism of reality. And I'm sure many of you might have, experienced loss or grief or some type of, crisis of the soul, which at the moment could be quite difficult, but it also allows us to really reevaluate the terrain of our lives, and to question things and to look at things in a different manner had we not had those experiences. So, pain could be a great opener to, awareness and finding meaning in a different outlook. Um, so with that, before I talk about my near-death experience, I just want to lead a brief guided, journey just for like a minute or two. I personally have no idea what, any participants are going through at this time. And I want to honor the potentiality that maybe some of you might feel, some heaviness or have a lot of thoughts on you. Maybe some of you might feel light in the heart. That's good. But I do think it's good to start with a guided meditation as, you know, I've really become a big brain guy within my life, and I've learned that brain health is mental health. But also, when we're able to really relax the brain, that allows us to have a sense of spiritual health and connectivity. Is I've learned firsthand that there's a dichotomy between the brain and the mind, which goes against a lot of material reductionism, which states that once the brain goes, everything else goes. And I've really learned throughout my own near-death experience and through my own research that the brain could be a great ally within our lives. And when it's more quiet, that's when we could hear and understand, some of these things on a deeper level. And it's not, just strictly analytical that we're coming at it, but we're coming more out of it from a, right brain state. And so, studies have been shown through people who do study paranormal research that when the brain gets into a deepened state of relaxation, that's when a lot of interdimensional communication could happen, communicating with our angels, our guides, loved ones, and also intuition could be there, um, which is very much contradictory to our world. We're taught just more information is better and just to really fixate on the left analytical part. From day one, we've been taught that regurgitation is kind of the way to go, and to really ignore our imagination and to suppress that. And we wouldn't be here without imagination. The chairs that we're sitting, the tables that we're sitting in this room, Ions itself was once an intuitive hit in imagination. So technically, all of reality and innovation starts with imagination and being able to listen to that voice within. And so I'm going to lead a little bit of a guided meditation just to get our brains in a more receptive, relaxed state that could take us maybe from the gamma waves, which is, a little bit heightened, down to the beta waves and down to more of the alpha waves. So when you think of the alpha waves, you think of like cool California surfer kind of vibe, but it just allows the information to be more receptive, to be more understood. And, as I view life, kind of, and I'll give an example. It's kind of like an analogy of an apartment complex where in the first floor of the apartment complex, you could see maybe the bushes and stuff like that. But if you get to the 10th or 15th floor, you're able to see a little bit more and your awareness expands. And so when the mind is open, it's like a parachute. It is able to really increase your awareness. And so, yes, technically we're increasing our vibrations, but the vibrations of the brain become slowed down when we're able to get a more relaxed state. And that helps us to see more. And so that the brain could be a barrier, not the brain could be an ally, not a barrier between the two worlds. And so what I'm going to ask, and I apologize, I'm from New York, so we could talk a lot here, but I'm sure probably half of the crowd is probably from New York or New York transplants these days. But maybe I'm not. That's probably more Boca or whatever, East Coast. But yeah, I'm sure you guys do not like us at this point, but All good. Sorry for the contributed traffic. Um, yeah, yeah. Well, there's love I see from some. All right, so just gonna ask you to just get quiet and to listen to my voice, and also if anyone has a phone, just to make sure it's on the highest possible. No, I'm just messing. But if it's on the lowest possible sound, I was once giving a talk for an organization called the Forever Family Foundation, and someone had a ringtone of Frank Sinatra song, and I'm like, this is a losing battle. My voice cannot compete with Frank, so I'll just kind of let it go. But no, just out of courtesy, just make sure your phones are off, and I'll do the same as well. And then we'll begin just a little bit of a guided meditation. I'll get right into my NDE in just a moment. Okay. And by the way, I'm also a certified hypnotherapist, and I could talk about my past life regression work. What I'm going to do to you now is just strictly a guided meditation. It's not a hypnotic session, hypnosis session. If you are obviously interested in that, I do offer remote as well as in-person session for past life regression sessions, which can be profound. We'll talk about that, in a little bit. But I just want you, maybe for the first time today, just to be cognizant of where you are, and maybe for the first time to take a breath that you're aware of, to not just live, but to be aware that we are living while we're living, that we're breathing while we're breathing, and just become aware of all these things that we routinely do. We might take for granted that we don't really get connected to enough or become aware enough. It's kind of automatic. And so right now is just about creating more awareness of maybe where our thoughts are at, our mind is at, what's kind of going on. And just take a deep breath through a couple seconds just through your nose, and at your readiness, you could exhale through your mouth. And imagine that when you inhale, you're inflating like a balloon inside yourself, and you feel your body inflating with new, fresh, beautiful energy. And when you exhale, you're just releasing all the stuff, kind of like a car wash for your mind, body, and spirit, just letting go of the stuff that you don't need or maybe doesn't serve your greatest and highest good. And just imagine at this time all parts of your body becoming more relaxed, more at ease, and recognizing that we are so much more than what we could imagine. You might see yourselves as sitting in this chair, and that's all that there is. But if you take a step back, you recognize that you're in a chair, in a room, in a library, in Florida, in the US, a continent, on a globe, going around the sun. And so, just on a physical basis, we are so much more than we could ever imagine. Imagine then what it's like for the forces that we can't see with the physical eye, how much more beautiful, expansive our own divine light, our own spirit is. And so, right now, just kind of stepping into our own infinity of divinity, as I call it, and just letting go of any limiting thoughts that we've inherited. I'm this, but I'm not that, not good enough. Who am I? And just letting all those go and recognizing that at this moment, we are a perfect divine spark, perfect just as we are, here to learn, grow, and experience ourselves as spiritual beings, having a human experience. And at this time, you could just feel your own inner light growing. You could even imagine a candle, a white candle, just kind of sitting in your forehead, melting away any stress that you feel within your brain, within your body, and allow the warmth and radiance of this candle just to melt away any pent up stress or emotions that we're holding in our brain and in our body. going down to our shoulders. So much of our life, we hold so much of the weight on the world on our shoulders. Just letting go and feeling our shoulders relax, getting into our heart center, and just focusing on one thing, the first thing that comes into our mind that we feel warmth by, that we love, or something that might love us. Maybe a pet, maybe a family member, maybe an activity or a food. Following your own bliss, your own heaven, and feeling your heart expand with love as that all that there is, was, and will be, and all of life itself, everything else is just a distraction from the essence, a temporary detour. All things return to the matters of the heart and of love. That is what lasts, that is what is eternal, that is what life itself is when all is said and done. And just feeling your legs and body just simply relax, letting go of any tension, any self-limiting belief system, and leaning in and stepping in to your own beauty, your own eternity, your own spirit that soars and goes far beyond the pain and the temporary nature of this life and their darkest moments. Love and our soul go on beyond anything that is thrown our way. So at this time, you could even visualize your favorite color pouring itself down the tops of your head, much like in the morning or the evening when you take a shower, you're cleansed. Just imagine you're taking a shower with a beautiful color coming down the shower head, cleansing all parts of your body. It might be a violet color, a gold, or white, the first color that you really connect to deeply. And just imagine that color. It's just going to every cell, every part of your being, and just removing all of the heaviness, feeling one with this light, allowing it to permeate and penetrate any part of your being that needs a little bit more attention, love, self-compassion, and any pain that you feel, despite the temporary pain, whether that be emotional, physical, whatever, spiritual, you still find a way to love, embrace, and accept yourself beyond the pain, learning the beauty of unconditional love, which is the ability to love ourselves just as we are, through the ups, the downs, the highs and lows, learning how to love all parts of ourselves, not just things that check off the box of self-approval, but loving our own inner being, and just giving yourself a few brief moments to continuing to allow the flow of the breath through your nose and out through your mouth. Just imagine a beautiful hug that you're receiving. Maybe it's from someone that you haven't thought of in quite some time who might be on the other side. It might even be someone on this side that you miss. Maybe you haven't called in some time. It might even be a guardian angel or a spirit guide. Whatever it is that comes your way, just feel that gentle tap on your shoulder, that soft wind when the door opens in the doorway of eternity, and just feel that gentle guide with you and that voice that comes to your mind and heart, and the knowing how proud the spirit realm is of you, how much they see in you, how beautiful you are just the way you are, how courageous, resilient, brave you are for being a part of this hour of the human experience. This world is interdependent on each of our lights, and we contribute to so much more just by our own being that we could ever imagine. Much like the stars light up the night sky, we all are sparks and sparks of light that light up our world and all those around us. We remember that, we could connect to that, we could connect to that, we could embody that and deepen that light, deepen the spread of our light and the impact that we have. Just giving yourself a few brief moments just to breathe in and feel this warm hug that you're receiving from love, or maybe a specific being that you're connected to. Taking it in for a few brief moments and letting it go. Breathe it out. Feeling your spirit become lighter, kind of like a hot air balloon. It's just rising up and up and up to a greater place of love, a greater stratosphere of your own essence, and feeling more expanded, more at peace, more at ease with yourself. And when you're ready, you could slowly open up your eyes and just allow yourself to notice what you feel within your being, within your body, within this moment. And maybe it's a subtle shift or a quantum shift, but just focus, just from those couple of minutes, the possibility that you feel just a little bit, if it's 1%, 2%, 100%, you've done yourself a service by being present with yourself, being present with your breath, and recharging your inner being to love. That is the energy that allows the planet to continue. Much like the planet needs the sun, our world needs love to go around. And by you connecting to that, you're spreading something that will allow the planet to survive and to thrive moving forward. So with that, going to share my near-death experience, going to discuss a little bit of some of the lessons involved within both of my books, Life After Breath and The Wisdom Jacob's Ladder, both available to purchase on Amazon, and they're both been endorsed by people like Anita Morjani, Suzanne Giesemann, my friend Alison Dubois, Dr. Raymond Moody, and many others. And they've impacted a lot of people's lives. And I encourage you, if you have a story in you, to not be just defined by that story, but to define that story. And I firmly believe that we are all the collections of God's stories. It's just we have to be able to tell an interesting one and to share that with others so that we could have that ripple effect. God made us because God really loves stories. We are all the accumulations of God's stories, all of our experiences. And so do not be shy. Do not have that book collecting dust on a bookshelf. Bring it out there to the world. You just don't know who will who will be impacted by your words. Now I want to take you back to September of 1993. Today I am 34 years old, just to give my own age away, uh, chronologically, but like you, I am timeless and ageless. Um, Maybe not physically. I've, lost a little bit of hair, getting some gray hairs there. The joints aren't working maybe as they did in my 20s. No, I shouldn't be complaining. But saging while aging is my emphasis these days. But I had my experience at 3 years old. At this time, I had a condition called whooping cough, otherwise known as pertussis. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that, but for infants or children who've had near-death experiences, I'm sorry, infants and children who've had pertussis and near-death pertussis, that could lead to, um, you know, deaths, fatalities, or at least very compromised conditions. Um, so wasn't formally diagnosed at the time. My parents didn't really know what I had. It wasn't until I was rushed to the ambulance to the hospital where they recognized, what I did have and what led to my near-death experience. Uh, September of 1993, I grew up in a Jewish, Orthodox family, just to preface. Jesus, angels, all these things that I'm describing within my near-death experience weren't things that I possibly could have learned within my own traditional background. The only thing that I could point to was that my near-death experience coincided right around the times of the high holidays, or in the Jewish calendar of Yom Kippur, otherwise known as the Day of Atonement, which is a day in which the soul gets ready for itself to meet the Creator, to live a year of abundance, in a year of it's a manifestation time to kind of wipe the slate, if you will. Little did I know I was about to meet the Creator, but it wasn't, in a religious stance. It wasn't in a synagogue. It was a direct encounter with the Creator, as I'll share with you in just a few brief moments. Um, just to preface, there is chronological age that we have, and then there is soul age. And the first question that I have is, all these things that you're talking about, is this your language now? Did that change the narrative, or was that what you experienced? And what I would say is, we live in a world where we look at children as very much young, blank slates, empty canvases, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Many kids, in a way, are just coming back from the other side. And so they're learning to integrate into their bodies, into the human experience. And so, in many ways, the young are spiritually old, and at times the old who do forget who they are. In many ways, I see them as the young. And so chronological age um, isn't necessarily always congruent with soul age. And I experience this as an eternal soul, not strictly as a 3-year-old. But yes, two things could be true at the same time. Part of this experience was, related to itself and my 3-year-old self, but the awareness that I had was from my infinite soul that, knew the kingdom of heaven, that knew the other side, within the depths of my heart, no matter if I was 1 day old, 100 years old, it's something we all know that we don't learn necessarily within this life, but something that we remember potentially, um, on our journeys, just as you are today sitting in these groups. Uh, Beautiful day. I was, going to a playground at the time. I was with family, friends. I began to climb up a ladder going onto a slide, and I just got to the top and I just began to completely go into this coughing spree, and I suffocated as a result of whooping cough. And at this time, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It was the most traumatizing, scariest moment of my life, but also the most beautiful. I do believe I'm able to have recollection in many ways due to the traumatic events. As a therapist, I can attest that trauma could be disassociative if it's too overwhelming for ourselves, where we'll push it away. It's there, but it will come back when we're ready. Or we could have clear recollection as if no time has passed, as if we're right there. Analogy that I'll give, if someone asks me, Jacob, September 11th, 11 or 12, where were you? I could tell you the exact classroom, the exact city, the exact words being heard. Now, if you ask me where I was 9:15, 9:16, I don't have a clue. And so when we have something profound in our life, something's traumatic, it's as if, it happened yesterday. I know we could all share that with something profound within our lives, personally or collectively. So this experience feels like just yesterday. And I'll talk a little bit about chronological time in a moment. But I just began to suffocate as a result of whooping cough. Incredibly scary. Again, I felt like I was drowning. There was nothing to hold on to. I was trying to breathe, but nothing was coming up and nothing was working. The scariest moment of my life. If you're a homeowner, the way I could kind of describe this is if you're going to the basement, tune off like one power breaker at the time, and that's kind of it. and all the lights and everything are just totally nil. There's nothing. And that's what I was just feeling within my physical body. Everything was shutting down. So rather than, staying in my body, which, if you're a car owner, it's like you're trying to drive the car, trying to rev the engine. You're not just going to hang in there all day. If it's not going to work, you're going to probably get out, pop the hood. If you have a Tesla, I don't know what to tell you, but you get the point. And so for myself, I was able to just leave the body for a bit of time when my body wasn't working. And then all of a sudden, I was able to have a great sense of real understanding of my physical body, all the different components of it. There was just an intelligence that I had that there was no way I could have had if I probably would have went to Harvard medical school, bear in mind, 3 years old. And so it's true. We say we use a very small percentage of our brain within this life, and I can tell you, yes, absolutely. There's an awareness that goes beyond just our own conscious awareness within this life, and we have super conscious or subconscious awareness of so much value and wealth of information that we're not always privy to or aware of within this journey. Um, at this time, I just knew what was about to happen. I just felt, my soul was ready to go into a journey. I felt this vortice within the corner of my eye that I knew was just accompanying me, on this period. Um, in those moments, I became aware of my brain, which is the last thing that I saw. And I just was able to really just have transparency of it, very much aware of all the different parts. And all of a sudden, I was just able to just feel my brain just like crumbling. And I just felt this tremendous crack within my brain due to the deprivation of oxygen. And there's a euphemism that says my brain cracked open and God came in. You might be familiar with that. Well, that happened. I think everything that we say has a value. There's a reason for everything. It's not, these aren't just random words that we're throwing out. This reveals the nature of reality, that the brains do not produce consciousness. They're just filters of it. And once my brain cracked open, that's when I had a lot of the classical near-death experience, mystical near-death experience, components that I experienced. I felt myself going into the traditional tunnel. I felt myself vibrating and soaring at an infinite rate. And I felt, more importantly, euphoria. I think for ourselves, we sometimes could have a cap of how good we could feel because we're bioneurochemicals. So it's like I don't know, have a piece of pizza, you eat it. There's always just like this cap of life. No matter how good things are, there's just this cap. When I was crossing over on the other side, I could tell you that there's no limitations of how high and how good you feel. And I've been on some pretty wild trips, back in my heyday, and there's no comparison. This was like there was no limit with how high and how good I felt in my crossing over experience. And it's kind of like you could imagine yourself going on the fastest possible roller coaster where it's so fast you can't even process things. It's just vibrating to eternity, to infinity. And that's just what I felt. It was just going upwards and upwards to eternity, where I felt just complete bliss. Moments later, I was coming down to the awareness of my body. I felt to the right side of my brain, which I now know corresponds itself to our own creativity, our insight, our wisdom. But behind the right side of my head, I was able to see a tremendous, beautiful palace. And when I looked at it, the colors were so vibrant and profound that it was too powerful for me to look at. I just almost had to shield myself because it was such a quick adjustment from this realm to over there. It was very powerful, but I was able to see angels within this palace, and its light was so incredibly bright. And when I was able to tap into it, I knew for me it was a representation of God. And some people will call it the universe, some people will call it creative source. For me, I use more the traditional, maybe religious word, that's just my language. but God I referenced as a guiding, organized design, within our life. Um, you know, but it's where all of life itself comes from itself in its own purest form. And when I was, aware of it, I just knew it was eternal, infinite love, unconditional love that I was tapping into it, where all of life was created from, all of us come from, and just this endless apex of the centerpiece of reality where all of life, came from. Moments later, I just became aware of a beautiful horizon, this endless horizon of a sky that was coming in front of me. And I just felt a sense of familiarity. I felt my spirit going to the one of the highest possible octaves on the other side. And I just felt this knowing or this whisper of Christ. In many near-death experiencers reference physical Jesus coming in front of them and they're able to describe it. But this to me was much deeper. I think we have our own physical representations of the expression of ourselves, but this was more of a consciousness, of a whisper, of an awareness, of a vibratory field on the other side, and one of the highest possible vibrations on the other side when I was crossing over. And at this time, I just had fears as to what I would look like, what my life would be like, at this time. And all of a sudden, all those fears dissipated, and I was left with the best way I could describe an awareness that all is well, was well, will be well. And, within our lives, fears is very much about bracing for the future or sadness, fixations in the past. And we're so used to this reality. We're like, okay, I'm doing well here, but I have something coming around the corner that I have to brace myself for. When I crossed over on the other side, in that moment, I just felt a recollection that time is a great illusion. There is only one present moment. There is no past, present, future. That's a human construct. There's just in eternity. It was non-linear, and I felt incredibly good. I had just fears as to what my parents would experience losing myself at this age, and I still had connection to that. And I was just shown no matter what happens, that we would connect, whether I would go there or cross over, that the two roads would meet at the same point no matter what, and that we were internally connected. Moments later, I was aware of my own spiritual guides, or as some people call guardian angels. When I looked at them, there was a male and female guide. To this date, it's the one detail of my near-death experience that slips my immediate awareness, which was their own specific names. I call them the guides these days. I have some theories as to what their names were, but at this moment, I knew their names loud and clear. And when I looked at my own spirit guides, I just saw them as the most beautiful beings that we could ever imagine. Um, but these beings weren't like looking down at myself. They were rather looking up. Imagine you have like the most inspirational figure of your life, whether that be some type of celebrity, well-known figure, or just someone within your own immediate family. And imagine you have the world of respect and admiration. But imagine that person that you have so much love and admiration and see such good in, that exact notion is reciprocated back to you. And you're just like, who am I in that moment? But on a spiritual level, we are so much more differently seen than how we see ourselves through the ego, which many would call edging God out, but edging ourselves out, edging the spirit of ourselves in this box that we have of our own perceptional viewpoints. Our own doing has infiltrated our inner being, our own being, and that has been problematic. But I just saw my own spirit guides with me, and I felt a degree of embarrassment, and it wasn't their judgment, it was my judgment, or in a sense that sometimes we walk through this life just feeling our own individuality, and we feel that we're living in silos. And when I was aware of this, I just knew that my guides were always with me at every step of the journey, that this wasn't just a random existence where we were all here just to pay the bills and live the material thing. this life comes from the guiding, organized design. It is not random. It is methodical. It is intelligent. And we are surrounded by so many forces at hand that are with us. If we were able to see those things, there is no way that anyone would ever feel alone ever on their human journeys. But moments later, my body was lying on the ground, and I was aware of all the people that I was with at that day that I went to the playground. And I saw that they were poking at my body, yelling my name, and I was to the side of my body. I felt a form. Some people say when they cross over, they're formless. I didn't feel that. I still felt like I had my own spirit form when I was to the side of my body. And I tried my best to just shake them and to tell them, I'm okay, I'm fine. But it's just kind of like I could see them, but they couldn't see me. All they saw was just a body, which is not ourselves. That's just a vehicle. We are an eternal driver. We're not just the body. But moments later, I was able to see and look in all the people that I was with at the playground that day, and I saw their auras, which is our own electromagnetic fields, something that we're born with called a primary aura color, which is our soul's, energy that we have, and we have secondary and third, maybe more colors throughout time, but we have a primary aura color that we're born with that really deals with what we're here to do in our given purpose. And I was able to see their beautiful auras shimmering, also their own angels and guides around them, as well as an awareness, a transparency of who they were as spiritual beings. Now, bear in mind, the people that I was with at this park, you would not, associate them with, a deity or religious beings or people that you would, see in ashrams. These were just, regular CPA types, very logical. And I was just like, what the heck is going on? Like I thought on one level I knew these people, and that was just the perception or limited perception that I have. But I looked at their core, I just knew at that moment all of life is spiritual. Some may embody that within this life, but at our core, we are all, sparks of infinite light. Some remember that a little bit more in their lives. Some are here to maybe show that, and some are different soul levels while they're in this reality, but that is our core. Moments later, I just looked up and I saw an infinite ray of angels that were floating right above the scene. And when I looked at the angels, different than the spirit guides, where I knew that they had human characteristics and we had a big, deep connection, the angels had no human characteristics whatsoever. They had no individuality. They were just basically uniformal in sharing love and sharing warmth to what to the energy field. And it just felt their radiated force. And they were literally just floating right in front of my eyes, right in front of me. And I almost just had to pinch myself because we see this reality and that's all that we see, but literally just a small tick right above this reality, we have angels all around us at all times that we just aren't aware of. And it's just a fine veil that separates this and the other realms. And so, yes, on the other side, some things could feel like thousands and millions of miles away, but also heaven is right here around us. It may not feel like that, certainly with the world going up in flames these days. It's the antithesis in many ways, and not all parts of the world, but we see what's going on. But I could tell you that it's around, it's right here in this room. They're all here. Um, and when I was seeing the angels, I just saw that they had no identities beyond just giving, giving, giving. There was no like concept of like, well, if you do this for me, then I'll give that to you. It was just unconditional giving and loving and just there to elevate the particular scene in the planet. The true embodiment of unconditional love, which is to me the essence of the divine. And moments later, I became aware of my own soul family, which, is a term that I throw out and many do as well. I don't feel it's totally representative of the truth, or a sense that we all are a part of a soul family here. But as we know, within this, some of you may know, within this life or different lifetimes, we have more of a nuclear core, just cast that we reincarnate with. And, it's to me just a ray of the divine, an expression of divine. It comes from a similar just soul pod or soul group that we're connected to. But when I saw my soul family, I just instantaneously knew who they were. I was very much aware of them, but I also felt a degree of shame where I was just kind of like, imagine you're about to go off to the military and you throw like huge gala parties and you're hyping everyone up, and then a day or two later, you're like, all right, I'm not going to do this. But in that moment that I had that thought, it was just pure unconditional joy and excitement and love. And it didn't feel like a premature reunion. Rather, they were always connected to me. The blinders, again, were on from this human experience. The moments later, I just had a question, or had a question posed to me, rather, which is, what would I do? Would I stay on the other side, continue my life as Jacob, or would I cross over? And I really just did not know what to do. To preface, the majority of near-death experiencers are really told or suggested rather to stay. That it's not your time, and you have maybe some karmic stuff to work out, or you're more maybe better served in this reality than over there, as I do think that, the afterlife is not a retirement home. We're always beings of service and beings of experiences here to elevate. Sometimes when people cross over, I do believe that they could impact reality more effectively over there, more so than over here. And I know that's hard when we do lose a loved one, because for ourselves, we feel tremendously impacted by that loss and we feel that they would be better suited here. But there is an intelligence that goes far beyond our own understanding. I experienced this on the other side. And sometimes some things that really just don't make sense, we'll be able to see some of the deeper mosaic within different phases of our lives, but eventually all makes sense. Um, but I just asked, what is my life? What am I here for? Who am I? What happens if I'll stay? Just kind of figuring out, is it worth it to stay? Moments later, I began to see just flashing imagery of different past lives as I spanned the globe, and I went from culture to culture, civilization, civilization in different time frames. And the last lifetime that I really connected to, which is in both of my books, which has been evidentially read by me by different mediums and intuitives prior to ever me getting public with my experience and never saying a word about it, which was a life in which, as a mental health therapist, I don't use the term commit suicide, as I don't criminalize mental health, much I don't criminalize breast cancer, heart disease. I do not criminalize that, nor does the spirit realm do it. But I had a crossing over experience, or a bodily death by suicide. And within that last lifetime, I just remembered, you know, everything that happened and all that kind of led to that decision. But I also saw, from completion we begin, and how the near-death experience was very much allegorical or related to that lifetime. In a sense, in that lifetime, I felt there was nothing to hold on to. My back was against the wall. There was no hope. This was it. And then from that awareness, I decided to make a decision. And when I had my near-death experience, I felt those same exact feelings, that this is it. There's nothing else. That's it. But this time I decided to do something different. I decided to surrender to the light of eternity, to the eternal breath that we're created from. And from losing my own human breath, I was able to surrender to the breath of eternity, which in the Jewish tradition, the word for spirit is actually the wind or the breath of God. And I experienced that directly. And so I recognized in that moment the power of surrender. And when our knees are shaking the most, when moments when we're feeling most deprived, when we have nothing to turn to, there is so much power in surrender. and surrendering to the power that's inside of us and all around us. And I recognize that was one of the messages of my near-death experience. But I just saw premonitions of myself, speaking in front of people and helping others. And, when I was speaking in front of people, it wasn't like I was some pompous, guru or, making millions of dollars or, feeling just superior, than people that I was talking to. Rather, I was one with each person through the talks. And I was just simply a messenger of what they already knew. And I looked at the eyes of all the participants that I would speak to throughout the years, and I said, wow, the other side is always going to be there, but the ability to bring this awareness here onto this earth is nothing that I could ever turn down. And within that decision, within that agreement, everything slowly began to dissipate from my immediate awareness of, around me, but I just knew something I was always connected to. That moment later, I just was filled with incredible doubt. I just said, oh my God, what did I just do? I turned down the other side to come back here, and my guides left me with an awareness of the blueprint that we are here with. Before we get here, we have a blueprint in our life, and there's an intelligence beyond that, there's a purpose beyond that, and just the capacity to be in rhythm with ourselves and to trust in what happens to us as we could feel victimized or we could feel like the victors of our lives. And part of that is being able to have the growth mind versus the victim mind. And if we're able to have trust in our experience, which Albert Einstein said is the most important um, position to have when it comes to the universe, that the universe could be a trusting place, an ambivalent place, or a place that is really against us. That's when we'll really be able to propel our lives to greater heights and we'll be more in harmony with the spiritual reality. And so at that moment, my thoughts, I was told, could align or disalign ourselves with reality and the power that they have, the power of belief, that we all share. And moments later, I woke up on a hospital bed with my mother, in the room, and the rest is history. And so, within this time frame, and I'll kind of share a little bit about, post NDE. I was having, now looking back in it, a great deal of trauma symptoms. When you experience something so extreme and crossing over on the other side, and nothing against the medical field. I have a brother who is a doctor. I have the world of respect for people who do serve, in the medical field. But it's not, the light realm. You're waking up in a cold hospital bed. A doctor was, working on me. And my mother told me that I became so angry days later that I literally kicked the doctor and ran around the room. And that was very much a trauma symptom as well as a grief symptom. Trauma isn't just anxiety, it could be anger, as can be grief. But I was feeling very much tortured in a sense where I didn't have the language to possibly conceptualize what happened to me. And I thought that my parents would be aware of it or to know about it, but I just knew that they didn't. And as kids, sometimes we put our parents on pedestals of being all knowing. In a sense, well, we're physically dependent on them. And so, in many ways, we're also dependent on them through our own worldviews. But I just saw that there was just a topsy-turvy viewpoint that I now had of my parents, where in a sense that I felt like an adult and they felt like children in a way. And that led to a great deal of defiance and just difficulty in being able to have, there's a lot of role ambiguity that I had. Whereas kids, there's radical acceptance that you might have at a certain point of being a kid, but sometimes you just remember, like, geez, this is just part of the act. There's so much more to this, and you're not as able to be as programmed or conditioned just to see yourself as this little kid. And so it was very complicated to say the least, as my book, Life After Breath, leans into a bit more. Just for time's sake, it's a little bit hard to get into that. But, you know, through talking about things, that's how we really could process. And I believe if we can name it, we could tame it to a degree. So obviously, years later, I was able to receive a book by one of my godmothers. It was by Betty Adie called Embraced by the Light. And that was the first time that I ever heard the term near-death experience and I ever heard that someone else had this. And, there was a point where I felt like Harry Potter, like I was the chosen one, and then I just became the frozen one, where like, damn, you're not that special. Like a lot of people have this stuff, and it's like whatever. But that gave me the lexicon to understand this was a thing, and there was a verbiage for it. But more importantly, that there was a meaning to it. That the meaning wasn't just for me to hold on to. It wasn't just about myself. The meaning was in the giving of the story. That this really wasn't so much about me, but it was about sharing and giving it to other people. And so that's when my life took a lot more of a beautiful turn, rather than seeing this as a curse like it was. When every kid is young, what do you want? What are kids programmed? They're taught to be normal, to fit in. That's what kids are often taught. And so for myself, I was often called weirdo by other kids, which we're seeing now that's thrown around in various different arenas. But I was called, weirdo as a kid. People just didn't understand me. I remember there was a moment when I was very young in preschool where I was having interdimensional communication, and I was seeing spirits around the room, and I looked to a classmate. I'm like, "Do you see what's going on?" And all these things in the classroom, and the classmate's like, "I'm not gonna go New York here, but what the bleep are you?" He didn't say that, but he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's just like, he's so bewildered, and that just allowed me to remind myself that I felt very much alone, in a sense. I felt like the oxygen that was deprived of me in my near-death experience was something that almost lasted 2 decades, where I just felt like the outside world, did not understand me. So I really just kept it within. But I had a lot of premonitions and intuitive hits, and these were just very much nuisances. I would see things, hear things, know things before they happen. I'm like, just leave me alone, let me live my life. And so I just tried as much as I could to bury this, but it would always just come back to me. And it was always there. And throughout moments of my life, I remembered, the charting phase before I got here in this life. I'd have a lot of dreams of memories of that. I'd also just be playing sports and have visions of past lives as Native Americans in this last life that I had. And they just come to me, and I just would kind of keep it within. But years ago, I learned that for the first time by talking about it, to my parents, who more of the intellectual, left brain, religious kind of types. Um, my dad is also a therapist too, but he said to me, he said, when you had your death experience, you came up to me a little bit after, and I'm just using my own vernacular, where I said, hey, Dad, something profound happened to me on that day, in the playground. It's not going to make sense to you now, but one day you'll understand. And so that just gave me validation, where I just didn't have the language to describe this. Then, in my early 20s, a lot of things just started to happen, where I just knew that this was, um, something that I needed to share. And so lessons from it, that I wanted to share beyond what's in my book and including in my book. First things first is we don't die, we're eternal, infinite spiritual beings. Obviously, I wouldn't be here today, as I said before. Number two, life is not random. We are all here from a guiding, organized design. We are all spiritual beings. We are so much more in our contributions to the world that we could ever imagine. That's something to remember. Number three, we are never alone. There is a chapter that I wrote in my book, The Illusion of Loneliness, and that's been a big epidemic, an uptick obviously since COVID in many ways, and obviously with people living more against the grain of what's natural. I don't believe we were meant to live on Excel spreadsheets or on our phones. We're meant to be more interdependent on each other, but we've gotten very much away from that. And I think it's so great what you guys are doing here today, which is going back to the natural order, interdependence, community. That's what our brains need. That's what our spirits needs. But I, I caution people to ever say that they're alone, because if we knew what was around us at all times, we could never feel that way. And I think remembering that is very important, particularly as you might deal with isolation or loneliness, and to recognize how loved you are and how much we all have around ourselves. And so we're a culture that really is obsessed in many ways with superpowers. I know we just had Comic-Con here in New York City, but I do feel we we look at those things and there's an obsession with those things for a reason, in a sense that they reflect something that we already have within ourselves, much like what's going on with near-death experiences and just the explosion of it. But I think we all have our own superpowers inside of us. We all have spirit guides, guardian angels, beings that love us infinitely more than we could ever imagine. We are all intuitive. We all have an innate wisdom, and we all have something inside of us that's been buried deep within. And so my near-death experience is not much different than yours in a sense that there was something inside of me that was always there that I was just taught to run away from, to move from. When we're taught from day one, we're not taught that we're good enough. We're taught that we need a great grade to be great. And if we don't get that great grade, all of a sudden we're crap. We don't feel good. And so people ask me, why is there such a degree of a crisis within the mental health field? And I would say there's so many people who are just leaves in water. Wherever the current goes, whatever the opinion of someone else or something else, now that's so much more heightened within social media. That's our judgment, that's our opinion of ourselves. In the spirit realm, I learned in my near-death experience, wants us to fall in love with not so much the doing, things that are temporary, our cars, our houses, our salaries, all those things could be assets, certainly, but they're not the totality of ourselves. But to more so fall in love with our own uh, our own beings. And we are not a human doing, we are a human being. And I think that's important to fall in love with our own essence. Number four, this is not our only story. No matter what we're going through, there's always more to write and always more that has come before this in chapters to reference from. But it is the current chapter that we are all drafting within this life. And I think it's important to understand that we are all writing our eternal stories. It's neither good nor bad in a sense as how we view it. It's all just an experience of the soul. So we all have many different lifetimes, many different experiences. And part of this is understanding that we are here in the earth school, which I know is a very traumatic word for some people, school. But I think really it's about growing, becoming a bigger expression of ourselves in different lessons for ourselves to go through so that we could evolve and grow and expand. And, just remembering that no matter what we're going through, number four or five, everything is temporary in this life. No matter how hard an experience that we're going through, everything runs its course. Even our bodies, everything is temporary here. What's left is ourselves, the love that we spread, the love that we are, and the meaningful relationships that we do have. We live in a world that says more is better, but I just say spreading the love is the new more. It's not so much taking and growing it, all that stuff is good, but what could you take with you that that you can't leave behind? What is the essence? What is there at the end of the day? And for me, I learned love survives death, and love is what lasts. And so, number six is people ask me about heaven. What is heaven? Where is heaven? I would say that heaven is each person's own bliss. For some activities in heaven, like my grandfather, an activity might be fishing. He loved fishing. That's what he did. For another, it might be playing baseball. Some might vibrate more towards the light realm, and less kind of earthly characteristics within their eternity. The point that I'm trying to make is our lives that we live here are a part of our own heaven. Much like we look to the other side and what beings are doing on the other side, as heaven, where the lives that we live are their heaven. So they're connected to us and what we do. And so it's important is if we do love someone who crossed over, is to entertain them, to do maybe some of the things that they love to do, to live in their honor, and to be the undeniable proof that they existed and what and their impact on ourselves and what we're able to cultivate. And you may not have to believe in the afterlife to have continuity of it, I would say. If you're able to remember what that person stood for, who they were, what they were about, and embody that, they're going on. They're continuing. And I learned our loved ones love to be talked about. They love to be memorialized. They love to still be a part of our reality. And so if we can do that, we do keep yes, life eternal over there, but also life could be eternal over here. One of the other, last lessons that I would like to leave you with is heaven on earth. I know a lot of people hear that term, and I would say, like, what does that mean? That to me, that means making this reality as much as we can, like over there. And how do we do that is just remembering that we are all different pieces of heaven here on earth. And so if we're able to embody that, we're able to cultivate that. And if more and more people are aligned with their true selves, rather than um, just separation from that, we could make this world a much greater reality. And what is heaven on earth? From my near-death experience, I learned it's about unconditional love. It's about being our brothers and sisters keeper. I had my near-death experience in a playground out of all places. And I just asked myself, why? A playground. What is a playground? And I learned that a playground is symbolic, that we are all children here are on our brothers and sisters keeper in the eternal playground of God. We're here to take care of each other. More importantly, we're here to have fun and to enjoy our time here as much as we can. But we are our brothers and sisters keeper. We are all children of God. And so I think we're here really to remember that and to recognize that our world might operate in terms of scarcity, that there's few slices on the pie to eat for everyone, and there's a fight for that terrain, and there's a monopolization on that we may feel. But I can assure you, when it comes to abundance, when it comes to love, there's enough to go around. There's no shortage of that. And one other person's success is our success. And so it's not only to recognize the illusion of ourselves, but also the illusion of separation, not just from the spirit realm, but from those that we encounter. And that transforms the me consciousness into the we consciousness, which I really learned in my near-death experience is the interdependency that we have, how we are all intertwined and interconnected. And if we're able to really embody that, we don't have to wait till we die to get to heaven. We already have it here, and it's an easy segue over there. And I'll leave you with with those particular references. I elaborate a lot more on that within both of my books, available on Amazon. Certainly, if you want to contact me with any questions, I'm certain the information will be here, but you could reach me, jacobLcooper.com, for any questions. But for now, we have a couple more minutes. So if you have a couple questions, we'll get to it. And if we're short on time, you could always email me your questions, and I'll do the best I can to respond to that. But it was a joy to share this experience, and it's my hope that this was something that just reminds you or just allows you to remember something that you have inside of you as well, that we all are eternal, that we all remember a part of ourselves that's free and unencumbered, and we don't have to wait to our last breath to live, to have a full breath here. We don't have to remember till we die to remember how to live. But learning how we die will allow us to learn how to live in a sense of the focus on what's important, what's significant, and how we could enhance our lives, of the things that really do matter. So I do thank you all for listening with your minds and hearts. And if anyone has any questions, we could get to those. But I know we're getting down to the hour. But yeah, we'll get to it.
Jacob? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're a little short on time for any questions, but I'll encourage everyone to email you with some questions. I had one, and that was, do you think you'll come out with a third book at some point?
I'm 34 years old, so there's no excuses. I mean, that would, it's coming in, I'm a little bit on a sabbatical, my writing. When you write a book, it's just like running a marathon. I do love it, but it does take a lot of energy. But I dream of writing as I dream of being used in the best possible way by God in the universe that would help out others. And so if that's writing a third book, I would love to do that. And I encourage anyone who is interested in writing a book to do it. Um, I study hospice care or palliative care studies. And one of the number one regrets that people have is maybe having a 5 or 10 year plan, putting things off, but also the fear that people, will judge us and living someone else's version of ourselves instead of doing what we want to do. And so do your own will. Don't worry about what others say. They'll always, you know, if you ain't popping, they ain't hating, that, as I say. So take that with a grain of salt. But it's not personal. Those that love you and understand you will love you and understand you. And those that can't love and understand themselves, you can't expect that back. So if you have room for maybe one more question, I don't want to get you guys in trouble here. But I think Mary had her hand. But yeah,
Oh, Mary.
Marie. Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mary. Is she on?
Mary Kelly, I see your hand is up. But
Unmute her one. Mary, can you unmute yourself?
might might be muted. Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's like that cell phone commercial in the early 2000s. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I really enjoyed your workshop.
Thank you.
And what you said. It was wonderful. I had two NDEs, and I just want to confirm that or validate that the light that you saw explained exactly what I saw, the light of eternity. And I do, since you're a psychotherapist, I do want to recommend Jan Holden. She did and as you are a psychotherapist trainer, she did an excellent presentation on how to handle an interview with your clients. So, so reach out to her and see if you can get her presentation. I actually did it at an international conference in Healing Beyond Borders, and it was very well taken. And
Good.
because they do a lot of interviews. And then you talk about the brain and how it affects you. And yes, it is more consciousness and soul that lives forever.
Well,
And
I appreciate that, Mary. Yeah. Well, certainly, again, I think you're experiencing something here. We're two complete strangers, never met each other, and yet are having parallel experiences, and that is just a microcosm of what happens in NDEs. So I do thank you for sharing that, and I will take a look at that. I do appreciate that suggestion. I know we're getting close on time, Deb.
So
So
we learned so much from you, and
thank you.
believe it resonated in our hearts. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all that you do here, and let's keep in touch. Don't be strangers, and have a good rest of your afternoon, okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone on Zoom. Okay, well, y'all have a nice Halloween.